Okay, I'm going to start by thanking Paul Grimkowski for getting everybody together and doing the legwork to get everybody here today. And Paul works for Water and Wellness, which is part of Original Ketone. Original Ketone, here I'll show you their website at which they sell their water products and the detoxification products, including all of the Quicksilver Scientific line. You can order from them at this number up here, 1-866-257-8168. And again, the website is purative.com. The webinar is going to be recorded. Hopefully that will all go well. I don't know if I have quite enough memory for that. And if you go to their website, you'll see down here there'll be a link to the webinar. This is the last webinar that we did, which is very similar to this one here. So if you need to go and brush up on some of the information, go back here and you can find that. Also, if you want to see more, there's a lot of material that I have on the website or on the web, various interviews of me. This interview is of Dr. Mercola interviewing me. It's about an hour and 43 minutes. They will cut that down eventually and post it to their website. And so there's more different information there. And also our website, quicksilverscientific.com. If you go to our website, you can register as a practitioner. When you register, that will bring you, it will give you access to the members login, and that will give you access to a number of different materials that you will soon find on the Purative website as well. There's a long webinar series on here, as well as various protocols for using our detoxification system. So now launching into the webinar proper, we're going to talk about Quicksilver's therapeutic detoxification system, and we'll talk a little bit about the testing that we do. I originally, when I got into doing metal detox stuff, I was using the prevailing paradigm, which was to use chelators and challenge tests. I had a hard time myself with the chelators. I was using DMSA. I made the mistake of using it while I had amalgams in, and that moved a lot of mercury from what I believe the oral cavity and GI tract into the rest of the body, and really made me sicker. And when I was looking at the analytical output, I was measuring the mercury in the urine. I wasn't really happy with what I saw coming out. I was taking a lot of chelator. I felt a lot of movement. I felt really bad, but I didn't see a lot coming out. My experience there caused me to really revisit what toxicity means and what detoxification means, and that led me down a long path of working with various people like Hal Huggins and Dietrich Klinghardt, and doing a lot of analysis and making a lot of products and watching, really digging into what detoxification means, and which revolves around the idea of what toxicity means. Is toxicity really a level of something? No, it's not. Toxicity is the response of your body to a given level. So there could be 5 of us in a room with exactly the same mercury concentrations in us, and some of us are having a hard time with it and some of us aren't. And this comes down to your defense system and your detoxification system and how robust that is. So we're at a point now in our history as integrative and functional medical people, where the FDA is coming down kind of hard against chelation now, and they're trying to push it away. You have this recent conference that most of you have probably heard about, the use and misuse of metal chelation therapy, where they're talking about chelation, is it a public health concern? FDA pushing back against over-the-counter chelation products. And so the FDA is trying to move people away from sort of the ACAM model of using challenges and chelators to lower people's metal levels. But what I'm going to try to get across to you here is it's not as much that somebody has really high exposure as it is that their removal system, their efflux system and their defense systems are down and not working well. And you can move into a model of bolstering, of boosting up the inherent detoxification system in the body, and that's not only going to move metals out of the body faster, but it's going to make you more resistant to the ones that are still in there. And that paradigm is a very effective paradigm for treating metal toxicity. And the beauty of it is that it spills across into all kinds of other different biochemical pathologies and different toxicities, because we're not just reaching in and pulling out singular metals, but we're upregulating a broad swath of the biochemistry that's responsible for detoxification and also responsible for antioxidant activities. And so this boosting up of the system has a lot of different effects beyond just, say, removing mercury. So often I show, as a preamble to this, a slide from a poisoning in Iraq that took place in 1972-73. And there was some good data that emerged from it. In this poisoning episode, people were eating treated wheat seeds. They were seeds that were held for the next year's wheat crop, and they were treated with a fungicide, with methylmercury. And this fungicide was there to preserve the seed, but ended up being a poison when people ate this seed because of the famine. And so what we found, we were able to look at how the biological half-life in days varied across the population. So here you have a population histogram looking at a percentage of the population in each one of these bins. From fast detoxifiers, biological half-life means going from the peak blood dose to half the peak blood dose. How long did that take? So the fast detoxifiers were running about 40 days. And then you have the median of the population running about 60 days. And then the slow detoxifiers running about 100 days. So here you see a very vast difference, 2.5-fold difference in how fast these people are getting rid of mercury versus these people. So if these people are on a constant fish diet where they're pouring mercury in via fish, or if they have dental amalgam in their mouth where they're getting a constant exposure, who is going to have a harder time with that? These people or these people? Well, obviously it's these people. And what did I miss here totally? What's this bar here? And how big is this? We're running about 12% of the population is out of the normal histogram. These are running at 120 days half-life. So these are the serious bad detoxifiers and the bad detoxifiers. This is probably a genetic subset. So it is in this grouping here between slow to ultra-slow detoxifiers where we find the people who are getting sick from their metal exposure. This is a mixture of genetic polymorphisms and very likely epigenetic modification of perfectly good genetic profiles. And the other aspect of this is functional expression. And here I cite inflammation and oxidative stress. And if there's two main things I want you to take home today, one, it's that having a toxic response to a metal load is more related to how well your detoxification system is functioning. And number two, that inflammation and detoxification, and I want you to put detoxification and antioxidant function in the same bin. So inflammation and that antioxidant / detoxification system are polar opposites, on a seesaw, if you will. When one goes up, the other goes down. When inflammation comes in to fight off some infection, it's using oxidative expression. It's creating peroxyl radicals, and it's using them to fight off a disease. And once that disease is gone, you're supposed to flip back up into cleanup mode. So when you're in chronic inflammation, you're chronically turning down your detoxification system. That is why there's so much of an overlap between chronic disease and metal toxicity, where which one came in first, we don't always know. But if the disease came in first and created chronic inflammation, that will then create a chronic tendency towards building up toxicity. And if the toxicity built up first, that'll lower your immune system. Either way, both of these are going to get established and create that pathology of inflammation and toxicity. This is another very big thing that I want you to see. there's a lot of what I'm looking at in the literature is what I'd mentioned before, how the strength of the detoxification system is what's determining your resistance to a given level of metals. And in this paper, there was cultured zebrafish cells, and they cultured lots of different cells, and they were trying to find cadmium resistance. They found a cell culture line that was cadmium resistant, and it could basically swim in cadmium. And they found, wow, guess what? It can also swim in mercury and arsenic. There's a good reason for that. So what did they find when they looked into the biochemical mechanisms of the cell? They found enhanced glutathione levels, enhanced phase 2 detoxification enzyme glutathione S transferase. So enhanced glutathione S transferase, and glutathione S transferase is the enzyme that's going to pull the metal off of the cellular proteins and link it up with the glutathione. That's what we call a mobilizing enzyme. And finally, enhanced activity of the MRP transport protein. MRP transporters, so you're in a cell, you got glutathione, you got mercury in there, you got the enzyme glutathione S transferase to link the mercury and the glutathione. Well, now you got to get it out of the cell, and it is the transport proteins, the MRP transport proteins, that will take it. If you look over to this schematic here, this is happening in a cell. You've got phase 1, phase 2 detoxification reactions. Then you move it out through phase 3, out of the cell into the blood. Another phase 3, moving it from the blood into the liver. Another phase 3 enzyme, moving it from the liver into the small intestines. When all of these are working, this cell could swim in mercury. If you knocked out any one of those, the transport protein, the phase 2 enzyme, or the glutathione synthesis, you lost that enhanced resistance to mercury. So right there is the essence of everything that we do with our detoxification system. We are trying to enhance those 3 aspects of the body's detoxification system: phase 2, phase 3, and glutathione levels. If you do that in your patient, the patient that will then become more resistant to what is in there, as well as get rid of that metal at an enhanced rate. All right, so with that, we're going to launch into the main themes here. We're going to look briefly. Now, this is my 1-hour synopsis of my normal 8-hour talk, and I've already ate 15 minutes of it, so I'm going to talk very quickly. And we're going to move you towards more expanded versions of this webinar that will be available on the Purative website soon, so that you can go through this very slowly, and there'll be videos as well, because it's going to take a long time to permeate all of this into you, but I want you to get a feel now. For one, the key forms of mercury and their exposure routes. We also have to get away from this putting all mercury in one bin. You get your challenge test back, it was high mercury. Well, what does that mean? Where did that come from? What are your sources? Which sources are you having a hard time with? And what if you're not excreting and then you had a low challenge test and that just meant that your kidneys weren't working? So first, what are the key forms of mercury and the exposure routes? 2, how does the natural detoxification system work? 3, how does the natural detoxification system get altered, leading to biochemical stress? So number 2 is those 3 elements of detoxification we need. Number 3 is how those get turned off. And then number 4 is how to look at our intestinal metal detox system to repair and amplify the body's natural detox system and safely remove mercury, cadmium, arsenic, lead, and a number of other toxins that fall into this glutathione system as well. So the forms and sources of mercury. First, we have the most elemental form, elemental mercury. This is the metallic form of mercury. It's got both a liquid and a gas form. This is the form that is 50% in your dental amalgams. Once you mix that liquid form with silver and zinc and copper and tin, it becomes a hardened form. But there is still a gas coming off of that 24/7, and that gas is slowly oxidizing to the salt form, inorganic mercury. This is formed as an oxidation product or a rusting product of both directly from the metal corroding in the mouth and creating corrosion products, or this vapor is becoming inhaled and going systemically, and that corrosion is happening in the body, and then that salt is deposited in the body. Now, key to my story of why dental amalgams are bad for you is not just the form you inhale, but the form you swallow, which you absorb very little of, but has a very detrimental effect on the detoxification system through having a detrimental effect on the GI mucosa. So the other form then is methylmercury. This is an organomaterial found in fish. It is bioaccumulated. It is 1 million to 10 million times higher in the fish than the water it is in. Some of this is formed in the gut from methylation of the corrosion products that you're swallowing. The other form then, ethylmercury, the final form, a synthetic organomaterial which has analogs to methylmercury but breaks down very rapidly into inorganic mercury. So how do we get these pathways in? The metallic vapor coming off of the amalgam goes through into the lungs and has 80% uptake through solubilization into blood lipids. It travels then as a small neutral monatom. It can travel across the blood-brain barrier, the placental barrier. It's the only form that can move actually into joints and very easily into the extracellular matrix. Eventually, after a couple passes through the body, this is oxidized in a reaction with catalase and forms inorganic mercury. Inorganic mercury is the most toxic form of mercury to the cells. If you eat it, it's not thought of as being very toxic because you don't absorb it very well, but once it gets to the cell, it's the most toxic form. Once it is in that form, it starts its route out through the kidneys, the liver, and the GI tract. The kidneys have the highest loading of inorganic mercury, the liver second, and the GI tract third. Then you have areas like the brain and the other glands coming in behind that. Now, methylmercury, you eat it. Methylmercury is in the protein of the fish, not in the fat. It is bound to cysteine residues in the protein. Those proteins are hydrolyzed. You are left with methylmercury cysteine, which is mistaken for methionine and is taken up through large neutral amino acid transporters in the gut at a 95% rate. It is taken into the brain, is taken across the blood or across the placental barrier, and it builds up heavily in the liver as it is moving out. It is eventually conjugated with glutathione, moved out through the gall into the intestines, but a lot of that glutathione breaks down and you're left with methylmercury cysteine, which was the first one that you absorbed. That leads to the very strong enterohepatic circulation of methylmercury. Vaccines are a pretty obvious route in, 100% uptake through that nice little needle there. It distributes everywhere that methylmercury does, but it breaks down into inorganic mercury faster. Both methylmercury and ethylmercury break down into inorganic mercury. Both methyl and ethyl are toxic as they are, but inorganic mercury is more toxic. So ethylmercury breaks down more rapidly into inorganic mercury, making it, in my mind, a more toxic element. So how do they come out? Methylmercury, I said, comes out as glutathione conjugate through bile and then through fecal release. Inorganic mercury, this is a roughly 50-50 split between urinary pathways out and bile and fecal pathways out. There is some disagreement as to how much this split is, but based on all of my experience and looking at 3,000 tests now where I look at this, I'm going to say it's about 50-50, if not even tilted a little bit more towards the kidney. Now, how does the natural detoxification system work? Well, the detoxification system is part of what I call the antioxidant detoxification protein repair super system. Everybody loves to talk about glutathione as this great thing, but nobody frames it within its systems, within the enzyme systems that drive it to work. And so in my super system model here, you'll see that in the center is what we think of as antioxidants: glutathione, thyroidoxin, lipoic acid, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin A will fall in there, CoQ10, both oxidized and reduced. But none of these things is really effective in your body unless it moves through its enzyme systems. And these enzyme systems drive it into antioxidant use, protein repair and regulatory use, or detoxification use. So you have enzymes to take glutathione, via glutathione peroxidase to quench peroxides and lipid peroxides. You've got peroxyreduction. You've got ascorbate peroxidase to use vitamin C as a peroxide quencher. You've got thyrodoxin peroxidase to use thyrodoxin. Once you have oxidized glutathione and donated the electrons to quenching some free radicals, then you need reductases to cycle it back into the central pool of reduced glutathione. And so that's glutathione reductase that does that. Dehydroascorbate reductase is there for doing that for vitamin C. And lipoamide dehydrogenase is doing that for lipoic acid. Now the problem is that all of these different enzymes are expressing at different rates. So even if we bring up the glutathione levels, if we don't bring up these enzymes as well, we're not bringing up the functioning of the whole body. And so here we have for protein repair glutaredoxin and thyrodoxin. These are phenomenally interesting things that we can't go into today, but maybe I'll do a webinar just on how these extend your glutathione capability into all of your cellular proteins. Then when you get into detoxification, here's the real meat of what we do. You've got the detoxification enzymes, the phase 2 mobilizing enzyme, glutathione S-transferase. Then you've got those transport proteins that are going to take the glutathione mercury conjugates out of the cells and out of the body. Those are called multi-drug resistance proteins. The point of all of this, I was going to say conjugated, but coordinated detoxification biochemistry is to remove free radical generators from inside the cell before they end up trashing the DNA. And so actually most of the great research on this is done in cancer journals, and there's a ton of it out there, but most of the great research on it came in the last 5-10 years, and all the functional medicine work on this was done really 20 years ago, and so a lot of people don't know how this whole system works. So often people talk about phases of detoxification, and most of you out there know about phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is called an activation or oxidative activation of a toxin like PCB, or if you're going to move a hormone out like estrogen, you're going to activate it in phase 1, and then you're going to move it into phase 2, which is conjugation. That's linking the toxin onto something like glutathione, which is going to make it water soluble and transportable, recognizable by these transport proteins. And the very important thing is phase 3 is a great way to control all this, because if the door out is closed, what does it matter what phase 1 and phase 2 are doing? So phase 1, this is dominantly the cytochrome P450 system, which people used to unfortunately ascribe to the activities of phase 2. So this is creating a free radical out of an element so you can move it into phase 2. And so if you don't connect phase 1 into phase 2, you're generating your own free radicals. So phase 2, that conjugation that makes it water soluble and recognizable for phase 3, again, glutathione S-transferase is our phase 2 enzyme here. And very importantly, this is transferring mercury from protein-bound sites to glutathione. This is not a spontaneous reaction where the protein-bound mercury jumps into the hands of the glutathione. It is through the action of glutathione S-transferase. Therefore, it is more important to have active glutathione S-transferase than it is to have high glutathione levels. Phase 3, the transport out. They've had different names over the years, from organic anion transporters, canalicular multispecific organic anion transporters, to the multi-drug resistance proteins with different names for where they are. 1 is cellular, 2 is more basolateral. Big deal here, same transporter memory pathway. So you can have many different phase 2 enzymes, glucuronidacetyltransferase, sulfotransferase, glutathione transferase, but when you only have one transporter for all those different pathways, that transporter gets stuck, then all those pathways get stuck. And very important to say, this is not hepatic detoxification. This happens everywhere. You just have more copies of these proteins in your liver and intestines than you do in your deltoid or in your thyroid, but you have these everywhere. So what does this look like? You've got phase 1 moving down into phase 2. You've got your conjugate now, and you want to pump it out of the cell. So the cellular MRP dumps it from the cell into the blood through the extracellular matrix. That is then pulled from the blood into the liver through the organic anion transport peptide. Another phase 3 protein that is then dumped through the multi-specific drug transporter into the normal small intestine. So how does this system then fall apart? Well, we can have genetic problems. We can have low glutathione, and that low glutathione can be a genetic problem where we have problems with our glutathione synthesis genes, or it can be an environmental problem where we're just using up our glutathione by having so much free radical stress and so many metals and so many toxins come at us. Or it could be that inflammation that's pressing down on the whole system. In fact, I was monitoring glutathione, and someone had very, very high glutathione levels. Then they got a virus, a viral flu, and those levels tanked. And so that illness was driving the glutathione levels down. And then with genetic, again, you can be missing a gene, or you can have an epigenetic modification of a gene where you're not expressing it. So then we move to glutathionase transferase, and it's the same thing. Genetic / epigenetic or environmental, where inflammation is turning down the expression of this system. And just to show you just natural changes in this system, where this system is declining with age. But what else happens with age? Inflammation increases with age. So the integrity, the robustness of this whole antioxidant detoxification protein repair system is declining with age. Here in this mouse study, where you're looking at young versus old rat study, young versus old rats, you see glutathione C and E in liver and kidneys declining 18 to 37%. I had already said that the enzymes are probably more important. What do? You see them going 35 to 50% down, except for one pair of enzymes that goes up, catalase and glutathione peroxidase. What are catalase and glutathione peroxidase? Essentially, they are fire extinguishers. They are putting out fires that have already begun. So when the system loses its integrity and free radical generation is exceeding the capacity or the robustness of the system, you have to funnel more energy into quenching peroxides. Now, very importantly, remember these numbers, because I'm going to show you how you can change all these numbers in the old rats back to the activity of the young rats later on by use of certain polyphenolic antioxidants. So we said glutathione and glutathionase transferase, genetic and environmental problems. Phase 3 can block everything all in one shot. Now, what can stop phase 3 really well? Well, you can have genetic problems just like you did with glutathione and glutathionase transferase, but the biggest way to stop phase 3 is inflammation, and especially inflammation of the gut. Now, you look at this model, and this is a picture of an autism case where you've got runaway inflammation in the gut, you've got toxicity locked into the body, and you've got massive oxidative stress, and you've got free radical generation inside the system. Now, that inflammation in the gut can easily be caused by heavy metal exposure, especially through amalgam, where you're swallowing metal all the time. So here was our picture of the smoothly working system. Now, what happens when we inflame the small intestine? That works directly on the activity of this phase 3 transport protein, and that activity downregulates strongly. What happens next? Sorry, I lost my mouse there. That then feeds back and gives a negative feedback inhibition of phase 2. You're not able to move these products of phase 2 out. Phase 2 turns down. So what does that do next? You then stop moving stuff out of the body. So you have a buildup of cellular and bloodborne toxins, but what does not happen is phase 1 does not turn down. Phase 3 and phase 2 seem to be coordinated. They probably came through similar evolutionary movement from bacterial biochemistry into our biochemistry, and phase 1 probably comes separately. So here you have phase 1 cranking out free radicals out of things it's trying to get rid of, including your own hormones like estrogen. In fact, in the breast cancer story, very good work done out of Johns Hopkins University and other collaborators found that they found estrogen free radical generation not being moved into phase 2 and phase 3 to move out of the body, and the free radicals, the estrogen-free radicals, were abstracting base pairs of DNA. They found elevated estrogen DNA adducts in the urine of these women who had breast cancer, markers for breast cancer, and the way that they fixed it was just bringing back up phase 2. So here you have this chronic disease picture caused by backing everything up at a small intestine, at least in our model. So think now about swallowing dental amalgam, and the problem is not just what you inhale, but the corrosion products that you swallow. And so while you're inhaling one form into the system, the other form is going and locking the door out for those toxins. Another thing that I didn't mention in this picture here, where we go from the cell right into the blood, is the importance of the extracellular matrix. This is where the beauty of things like original ketone marine plasma come in. This is a seawater product. We'll talk briefly about it. Purative and Water and Wellness also are a sub-company of Original Ketone North America. Most of you are coming here through ketone ties. Ketone isotonic is well known for its ability to harmonize the extracellular matrix. In this picture of the extracellular matrix, you can picture the blood capillaries up here, and you have this intricate system through which all nutrients have to move to get into the cell and through the cell membrane, and all waste has to move through there too. These antenna-like arrays are made up of weak acids that have to be alkalized and deprotonated to open up and keep their antenna-like array. This is where all information is moving through meridians. This is where acupuncture is happening. This is where homeopathy is happening. This is where energy medicine is happening. And one of the reasons they have such great results is by normalizing all of the communication that happens in this area. This is where acidification of the system happens and these arrays close down. You can view this like a solubilized gel, like an egg yolk, and you can view acidification of this or toxification of this area like cooking that egg, not egg yolk, but egg white, like cooking that egg white and having it cloud over and move from a solubilized into a gelled fraction. So now, to make this more holistic, we're moving from our cell through the extracellular matrix, through the lymphatics, then into the blood, then from the blood to the kidney and the liver, through the bile into the small intestine, and out to our friend the commode when all is working well. I just want to take a little side note and talk briefly about our testing system. People have used for years the chelation challenge system, and the chelation challenge system really sprung out of the fact that for most metals, your blood and urinary levels are below the detection limits or near the detection limits of most of the analytical technologies, at least the ones that used to be there, and for some metals, for the technologies that are still there. So when you provoke the system, you allow those levels to come up to a readable measure, where you could say, okay, now we can kind of put people on the same page, and we can say, now we can see, yeah, you did have some exposure to gadolinium. I couldn't measure it before in your urine or serum, but now I see it. And for mercury, this was kind of the case, but it's not the case anymore, because now we can measure down into the part per trillion range. I've run over 3,000 tests here at my lab, and we're the only lab in the world that's separating the fish and amalgam-based forms of mercury, or more specifically, we're separating methyl mercury and inorganic mercury in blood, urine, and hair. We're able to see into the part per trillion levels. I've only had below detection on inorganic mercury maybe 10 times out of 3,000. For urine, even less so, and for methyl mercury, I don't ever think I've hit the detection limit. So now there's no reason to have to do a challenge and to try to put everybody on the same page. And what are you comparing a challenge to anyways? You're comparing it to non-challenge reference ranges. And so it really doesn't mean anything. Everybody comes to me and says they're off the charts, and they think, oh my God, I'm off the chart, I have to do something about this. But the chart ends at 9, and most, a good challenge can go up to 90. And so it's not telling you much about the specific person. And if the kidneys aren't working, they're going to give you false negatives. It's not telling you how much is fish versus amalgam source. So here, when you look at the output of our testing, you get methyl mercury, specifically in the blood in its own reference range compared to other people doing the same test. Here is this person. There is the average or median of everybody that we've measured. Here we have inorganic mercury. Inorganic mercury is what you're getting from your dental amalgams, and you're getting some from the breakdown of the fish-based mercury. Here they are compared to other people on their own reference range. Here that's at the 75th percentile for that person. Here is the median. There's the 50th percentile. Here you can look at total mercury, and these percentiles are from N. Haynes. This is total mercury against CDC data. Here you have urine versus blood inorganic mercury. Urine, people didn't like urine and blood because urine and blood didn't correlate. But that's because blood is swamped out. It is dominated by methyl mercury. It is only when you put inorganic mercury on its own, in its own reference range, where you can compare it to urine. As blood inorganic mercury goes up, urine should go up linearly along this diagonal line. If it doesn't, this point here represents this person's unique urine and blood numbers, and it should fall on that line. If it falls down here, it means this person has what Huggins called in 1973, he termed the people with lots of amalgams and low urine, he termed that retention toxicity. Now we have a very clean metric for retention toxicity, and we know exactly who's going to have a hard time detoxing and who we should start treating with kidney protocols before we even get into the mercury protocol. It's these people who fall in this range. And then we have a hair to blood methyl mercury ratio. Hair is only methyl mercury, not amalgam or inorganic mercury at all. As blood methyl mercury goes up, hair should go up. If it does not fall on this line and deviates into the red, you know there's problems with metabolism of methyl mercury. These are more related to liver, and we're going to put this person on a liver drainage protocol before we move them into the main detox scenario. Just to show you another one, here's an opposite one. Here we have very high inorganic mercury, not so bad on the methyl mercury. You see a urine to blood problem where you're going to work on the kidneys first before you go into the main detox protocol. And notice that these numbers are very low. This is why blood total mercury used to be disregarded, because you could be, if you had no methyl mercury at all, you eat no fish at all, you could be at the 95th percentile for inorganic mercury and still be well below the detection limits at Quest and LabCorp. Those detection limits are either 0.5 or 1 ppb. So you go to your GP, you got a mouthful of amalgams, you never ate fish at all, you're running 0.47, you're toxic to me because you're at the 95th percentile, but your GP sees below detection limit on the blood. That's why they didn't like blood. This is a new game now that we have new technology. And here's somebody with very high methyl mercury and high inorganic mercury. This person lived in Hawaii, ate tons of ahi tuna and other high mercury sushi, also had a mouthful of amalgams, had very high levels of both, had bad detoxification profiles for both. The practitioner working on this launched him into a serious detox right away. Based on these, I would say, no, you got to do drainage for a month or two before you go get into detox. And this guy came back with the detox supplements in a week with a wild-eyed, fearful look on his eyes because it was really too hard on him. So now we have testing that not only shows you what the source is, but how to guide your detoxification. So now in the final part, we got about 20 minutes to talk about the intestinal metal detox system for repair and amplification of the body's natural detoxification system, how to safely amplify and remove the metals. So now if we go back to the study I showed you in the beginning, the cell cultures that were really immune to metals, they could deal with lots of metals and not have a problem. And what did they have? What were the three things they needed? They had effective phase 3 clearance. These were the transport proteins that are shuttling metal or toxin conjugates out of the body. Then they had effective GST, or glutathione S-transferase activity. This is the phase 2 detoxification enzyme that's going to mobilize the metal or other toxin from the cellular proteins onto the glutathione. And lastly, they had very high glutathione levels. They had robust activity of the glutathione synthesis enzymes, giving them high glutathione levels. So these are the requirements. You need effective phase 3 clearance for plus you also need, and this wasn't part of the cell culture study, you need effective binding of the elements once they get down to the gut. The reason for this is to move those metals away from those transport proteins. Ironically, even those transport proteins are for moving metal conjugates out of the system. If too many of those products build up around those transporters, the activity of them slows way down. So when you use a binder, you're moving the metal away from the transport protein, creating an osmotic gradient away from the transport protein that allows that transport protein to work at optimal efficiency. So that's the reason to have various specific binders in with this as well. So what does our system look like now? We have the IMD, or intestinal metal detox system, or I'm sorry, intestinal metal detox product. This is for opening up the phase 3 transport proteins and to act as a specific binder for metals to stop reabsorption and pull those metals away from the transporters. So IMD, then we have, as the second part, we have a phytonutrient system called Clearway cofactors. The cleanse isn't in the label anymore. I should take that out of there. This is to upregulate synthesis of phase 2 enzymes and intracellular antioxidants. There's very beautiful data on how different plants upregulate expression of different gene families, and this is to upregulate the antioxidant detoxification gene family. And then we're going to pour in substrates for those enzymes to use. We use a nanosphere or nanoliposome nutrient delivery of glutathione, vitamin C. There's another product with vitamin C with R-lipoate, and the closest thing to chelator that we're using is EDTA with R-lipoate. So when I show you these products, we're going to refer back to this holistic system. Where do these products work in this transport chain? So the phases, looking at where the phases are in this system, from the cell, remember I showed you phase 1 and 2 in the other diagram. It was up here. And then that's to prepare the conjugate, make say toxin glutathione conjugates, and then phase 3 is at the cellular membrane, kicking it out of the cell through the extracellular matrix and into the blood. From there, you have phase 3 pulling it in out through kidneys or predominantly through the liver. I say predominantly because most of the general toxin transport is going this route, even though I said inorganic mercury split about 50-50 between these two. Then in the liver, you also have lots of phase 1 and 2 conjugation activity from toxins that are pulled right into the liver from the blood, especially from first pass circulation. Those are conjugated, then move through this other phase 3 transporter out into the bile flow and into the small intestine. You do have some movement from the blood directly through phase 3 transporters into the lumen of the intestines as well. So remember again, I said when we block this area through inflammation, we shunt. Actually, I didn't show you that because we're in the short version of this. I showed you that when we block this area, we hold everything up. Now, one of the games that happens is that there's a door that goes back out of the liver, back into blood circulation to bring toxins to the kidneys. And this is because when you have, say, food poisoning or an infection in the gut that's just supposed to last for 7 to 10 days, you shunt more toxicity through the kidneys, and you have a high load going through the kidneys. Now, what if that happens because of your amalgams for 30 years? Point is, you're going to burn out the kidneys. And in fact, old naturopaths used to say, if the kidneys are burned out, look for the intestinal problem. And I very, very, very commonly see bad urine to blood ratios in people who had kidneys for a long time, We all had kidneys for a long time. People who had dental amalgams for a long time, bad urine to blood ratios, and also parasites in the gut. And we do everything we can to get this kidney working well, but until we fix that gut, the work we do on the kidney isn't doing what it should. So IMD, the first one for helping phase 3 transport, this is working through the gut. It actively turns down inflammation in the gut. It's very impressive. I got food poisoning recently. IMD calmed it down quite a bit. I've heard people with Crohn's having it calm down their inflammation. But mostly what we're trying to do is open up this door from the liver into the intestines. That's the one that gets cut most often by the buildup of amalgam mercury. But by moving up the chain, we're also opening the door from the blood into the intestine and the door from the cells out into the matrix and into the blood. We help the kidney by moving that flow back to the liver where it's supposed to happen. A lot of people with who have to wake up and pee 4 or 5 times a night tell me once they get on IMD, they stop doing that. And IMD works only from the gut. It is not working on the gut, on the kidney. It is helping the kidney by opening the liver to small intestine door. Another thing that how that impacts people is they get allergic to drinking, especially red wine. And you get a lot of people that say once they have IMD, they can now socially drink red wine again. And from a lot of other things I've seen, that implicates a block right there. So now getting into the phytonutrients, very interesting aspect of natural health. It's called phytogenomics. Phyto meaning plants, regulating genomics, gene expression. Certain phytochemicals upregulate expression of phase 2 enzymes, as well as glutathione and superoxide dismutase, your cellular antioxidants. This is often called the anti-inflammatory cascade because you're pushing the whole system back the other way. There are a lot of things that fit into this general model, such as the polyphenolics that are very active these days, like green tea extract, grapeseed extract, pine bark extract. I'm going to introduce you to haritaki, my favorite, which is an Ayurvedic polyphenolic. And then you look at other things like curcumin. That's anti-inflammatory. We do not use curcumin because it tends to damp phase 3 transporters, but it is big in this anti-inflammatory cascade. And then you have your sulfur compounds that work on this as well. Alpha lipoic, really R-lipoate is the one that we use the most of, but garlic and crucifers fit into that as well. In fact, most people have heard that garlic is good for mercury detox, and most people have heard that it's because it's a sulfur chemical and therefore a chelator. It is not because of that. It is because it upregulates your chelation system. This is your chelation system. Glutathione is your chelator, and it works through the action of these enzymes that are upregulated by garlic. Garlic has no chelating activity at all, either do the crucifers. So this all happens through a signaling pathway called the KEAP1 NRF2 pathway, where KEAP1 is a protein that holds the NRF2 in place in the cytosol, and when certain enzyme inducers hit the KEAP1, they alter conformation and release the NRF2 into the nucleus, where all genes that have a promoter region called the antioxidant response element are triggered for replication. They open up so that the RNA can come in, read that code, and go out and synthesize proteins that involve molecular chaperones, antioxidant and modulating enzymes, and importantly to us, the phase 2 detoxification enzymes, leading to detoxification of electrophiles and free radicals and removal of oxidatively damaged proteins, leading to cell survival. Where does this research come from? Mutation research. I'd said before, this is all for protecting your cellular genetics from mutation. And this is your chemoprotective system, and fortunately we know how to trigger it. So the polyphenolics, these are the ones we use the best. We use them more. We don't use crucifer and garlic as much. I find them a little bit more irritating to people, and the polyphenols more soothing, so I use them more. Big in this, of course, anti-carcinogenic, but very important, they cross the blood-brain barrier. Everybody asks me to make a specific chelator to go across the blood-brain barrier, and I say you don't need one, and I'll show you the picture of why. So here are the polyphenolics or flavonols. There's epicatechin from green tea, cocoa, pine bark, grape seeds. This is usually present in polymers called oligomeric proanthocyanidins. Here we have ellagic acid from pomegranates. It's also present in other things. And then we have quercetin from fruit skins and vegetables. And of course, no flavonol talk would be, oh, I'm not going to put that one in there. Okay, forget that. But now, if you remember back to the original data that I showed you about the detoxification system going down with age. So here you have the young rats and the old rats. You have this massive decays in the system. Now, when these rats are treated with a polyphenolic blend that comes from Terminalia chebula or Haritaki. In fact, here's a picture of the medicine Buddha. I used to have a picture of the medicine Buddha, and here in his hand he's holding the Marabalan. Well, this is commonly known as Haritaki, and it has got all the best polyphenols in it. It's got luteolin, it's got ellagic acid, it's got gallocatechin, it's got epigallocatechin, it's got epicatechin in it, gallic acid. All of these great polyphenolics, and what do? They upregulate that whole system. And so here you have the young rats, there's the old rats, there's all the levels that it went down, and the treated old rats just drinking an aqueous extraction or decoction of Haritaki. All these numbers went back to the levels. The old treated numbers went back to the young levels, including the upregulated catalase and glutathione peroxidase went back to their normal levels. And these were not ridiculously high levels. This was about 6 grams for an adult of the raw fruit, and based on the extract that we have, that is about the dosing that we have of Haritaki in Clearway cofactors. So Clearway cofactors, even though Haritaki is the anchor man, this is a synergistic blend where dandelion is what we're using as a cholagogue to move the liver, to move the bile. And remember, the bile is like the conveyor belt on which this all moves. And we have bacopa and gotu-kola in there for nerve and brain detoxification, nattokinase for breaking down biofilms in the gut and opening up circulation, pine bark extract for extra epicatechin, and R-lipoate as the sulfur family for upregulating this whole system. There's also selenium and some B vitamins in there. I'm going to have to move a little bit quicker with these things now, so I'm not going to spend as much time on each of these slides. But when I said all the mechanisms to detoxify the brain are already in the brain, here they are. These are capillaries at the blood-brain barrier. Stained in red is GST, the phase 2 mobilizing protein. Stained in green is MRP, the transport protein. And stained in yellow is where these two enzymes are co-located. They are co-located, studded all along the capillaries of the blood-brain barrier as an efflux pump. And all we have to do is optimize them to pump all of this material out of the brain. So look at, we're going to talk about liposomes, but look in the future for specially delivered liposomes of glutathione that will help you get at these mechanisms here. So cofactors, you can use them in low levels to just lightly boost the system. I'm not going to have time, I don't think. Let me see if the data's in there. Yeah, I do have the data. And at low levels, it's helping the system get back to where it's supposed to be. But at high levels, you overexpress the antioxidant system. Just to quickly show you some data on how this works, here, this is actually lipoic acid. Here, a baseline operation of HO. This is a phase 2 protein. This is with succeedingly higher doses of lipoic acid. You see very high upregulation of this phase 2 enzyme. Here is with St. John's wort. You have to get the threshold doses. Here is control. Here's 2 lower doses. Then here's a higher dose and a higher dose. You have to get the high doses to upregulate and overexpress this transport protein. Here, this is the phase 2 enzyme. Again, the lower dose is not doing it. The higher dose is doing it. You're getting 2 to 3 times the normal expression of these detox elements. So when you get into high doses, and very important, you have to know how to titrate up your doses. Start people at low doses so you don't hurt them. Start them up, clean them up, get them working normally, and then move into these high doses to overexpress the system. The other aspect of this is that you cannot continuously overexpress the system. Here, this is dosing the St. John's wort. It maxes, the MRP2 maxes at 10 days on that same dose. By 30 days, it's at the exact same level it was. So the most we get people to is 10 straight days of detox, and then we give them time to reset all this enzyme system. So Clearway, it's working at the gut. That Haritaki is used in Chinese medicine to regrow the epithelia of the intestines. The dandelion to move the bile. All of these aspects are hepatoprotective, especially the dandelion. All the polyphenols are protective to your vasculature. They are upregulating your cellular machinery, and they are helping the kidney as well, both by being anti-inflammatory and because the dandelion helps urinary output. So now we want to move into talking about nanosphere nutrient delivery. Most people have heard of liposomes at this point. All of this is based on phospholipid encapsulation. Phospholipids are aspects of your cell membrane that have a hydrophobic tail and a hydrophilic head. They self-assemble, and they have this oil-soluble and water-soluble side, and they can either self-assemble into bilayers that we call liposomes, or they can assemble around small lipid globules and solubilize lipids into an aqueous phase. So if it's a liposome, it's a bilayer, and we have a water-soluble element inside like glutathione. And if it's a lipid-soluble thing like CoQ10, then there's a lipid in the middle followed by, surrounded by a phospholipid layer. So the phospholipids themselves are very therapeutic. The phosphatidylcholine is used for nerve regeneration and detoxification of the liver. Now, when you do liposomal encapsulation, you're taking something water-soluble and making the body see it as if it were a very small emulsified fat. When you make these small enough, you can bypass the normal hitches to intestinal absorption. So, for instance, glutathione is broken down by enzymes in the gut. The liposome gets it past those enzymes, and it's absorbed in the upper small intestine, and it moves into the lymph just like it was a chylomicron or a small emulsified fat. Now, if you're using a very good delivery like our etheric delivery, or what we call etheric delivery encapsulation, you'll notice that if you get our new liposomes, they're totally clear. They're clear because they're very, very small. We're running between 60 and 130 nanometers depending upon the different product versus commercial products. If you get the commercial gels that you're used to seeing in the packets, those, I say 300, but there's a couple good ones out there, but most of the ones that you guys are seeing are more in the 600 to 1,000 nanometers. They are not absorbed very well. These ones that are well under 200 nanometers are absorbed right through the oral cavity, right through the mucosa in the oral cavity. Therefore, you bypass the whole first pass metabolism. They are also missed by the reticuloendothelial system, so they have a longer circulation in the body. The other aspect of what we do is we're not just using crude soy lecithin. We're using 85% pure phosphatidylcholine. This is similar to the grade that's used in Essential and Lipostabile, the injectables, so you're not going to have soy reactions in your soy-sensitive patients. We confirm the sizing by every batch by laser dynamic light scattering that we have right in the lab. This is our last batch of glutathione with 130 nanometer mean size. So glutathione, we know how good glutathione is for many different things. This is our reduced glutathione etheric delivery. One pump delivers 100 milligrams per day. We'd rather you take a couple pumps a few times a day than take it all at once, just so that you don't downregulate your own production. It's better to slowly infuse it into it. So you get intraoral delivery. This is flavored with natural lemon flavoring. Most of the other liposomal glutathione on the market smell horrendously of hydrogen sulfide. You'll find this is not the case for this. You can take it intraorally. It's because of the specific aqueous chemistry that we use. We're not creating hydrogen sulfide. That is what you smell. It is not the glutathione. So liposomal glutathione, awesome for the liver, great for the vasculature, great for the cells and the kidneys as well. Pathologies related to glutathione. Remember, you're going to use this glutathione outside of detox for all oxidative stress conditions. The more we see of type 2 diabetes, that's an oxidative stress condition. All heavy metal toxicity, herpes, this stuff is phenomenal. If you start getting a cold sore, you put this on it, it stops the progress in its track. If you're taking it regularly, you're going to prevent the outbreak altogether. Cardiovascular disease, cirrhosis, and other liver conditions, all the neurodegenerative diseases, lung problems like COPD and cystic fibrosis, those have deficits of glutathione. Rheumatoid arthritis and schizophrenia are localized glutathione deficits, where schizophrenia is a glutathione deficit in the brain. let's move on. The vitamin C R-lipoate. There, 4 pumps will give you 500 milligrams of vitamin C, 25 milligrams of sodium R-lipoate. This is sodium R-lipoate. This is significantly more powerful than alpha-lipoic acid, and you have it in a liposome. So be careful with your mercury toxic and metal toxic patients that you move them up very slowly with the dosages of this, because the R-lipoate is very potent at upregulating the glutathione system. R-lipoate you can use is traditionally used in type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. Also think about Alzheimer's as insulin resistance in the brain. Heavy metal toxicity, age-related decline in the antioxidant system, mitochondrial dysfunction. I take 10 pumps of this twice a day, and the mitochondria just rev up and give you so much energy. But I've moved all the mercury out, so it's not an issue. Cardiovascular disease, liver regeneration, and fibroblast stimulation. You can use this directly on your skin. Fibroblasts respond to vitamin C and R-lipoic for upregulating collagen synthesis. So this is going to work at a liver level, at a skin and brain level, at a vascular level. It's going to help the kidneys. It's going to pull, when it does take metals, it takes them out through the bile tract instead of through the kidneys. And it's going to help upregulate synthesis in the extracellular matrix and be used by the enzyme systems in the cells. This, I'm just going to run through this. This is all the support for R-lipoate, not S-lipoate, not alpha-lipoate. It is the R version that upregulates, that tags the NRF2 protein and upregulates synthesis of all the detoxification system in the body. This is just, you can go back to the webinar. You can read all of these things, but this is showing how NRF2 is regenerating liver, how it's renewing insulin pathways and stopping insulin resistance. It's showing also how R-lipoate is triggering that NRF2. It's showing increased glutathione system synthesis. Again, age-related loss and lipoic acid reversing that. There's Bruce Ames using R-lipoate for upping mitochondrial function and decreasing oxidative damage and increasing metabolic rate. This you very strongly feel in the metabolic rate. And soon we're going to have a specific mitochondrial formula that will bring in some other mitochondrial stimulators. The EDTA, we're reformulating this now to be in the etheric system, but that is, when you're working on lead, EDTA really does help increase your success quite a bit. Just a couple things I want to mention quick. I really like drainage remedies. I use Soluna, but all of them that are out there are really good. And Original Ketone has a 30x dilution of IMD. When you are getting people ready, this is called pre-tox, people that are real sick, and when you do our testing, you see bad excretion markers. Ketone isotonic with drainage remedies and homeopathic IMD is invaluable. 2 to 6 weeks or even more for real sick people, opening up those drainage pathways. Then when you move into the main detox, you're going to have no problem. Also, certainly look to intestinal normalization. Make sure there are no parasites there. Also, do not trust parasite testing that much. If it really looks like a duck, it may be there, even if you can't test for the duck. Original Ketone is drawn from an upwelling of marine water off the coast of France. It is filter sterilized. There is a permanent phytoplankton bloom there, bringing in a lot of the phytochemistry that come from the plankton that's so popular these days. It's filter sterilized so as not to disturb any of those organic chemicals. It has got all the different elements that are coming up from the crust that we're missing in our diet these days. The isotonic is superb for normalizing function in the extracellular matrix. The more they look at the matrix, the more they find these hyper-organized bundles of different proteoglycans that are creating channels for movement of your different hormones and nutrients and gases. Also, that's coming on the board, this is from the Craig Ventnor Institute. He's the human genome guy. Minerals in the genetic code. We're finding all these esoteric trace minerals that we need for replication of our genes. This is probably why the epigenetics is hitting us so much. So isotonic is great for corrupted terrain. It is a parasympathetic modulator. That is how we use it in our detox scenario, for upregulating parasympathetic activity so that we can increase drainage. Hypertonic, which is their more salty version, is just the opposite. When you watch heart rate variability, you'll watch that it upregulates sympathetic activity, and that is going to strengthen the body and stop the detox. The importance here is that you can use hypertonic to stop the detox and isotonic to start the detox. So you have a gas pedal for detox and a brake for detox. And it is incredible how fast it works. People who have way too much fatigue and are spinning out from detoxing too fast, give them 2 hypertonic, they will come back immediately. So you're working on the intestines. Isotonic is known to increase kidney output and is known to, I told you, work on the extracellular matrix and the lymphatics very, very nicely. So I'm just going to squeeze through that real quick. If you want to use drainage remedies, you can use drainage remedies for liver, for kidney, for lymph, any brand you want. You can look to the testing. You could say, oh boy, this guy has bad kidney pathways. His liver pathways are okay. So we're going to give him kidney drainage along with ketone isotonic. I also use Ioscherb's Rentone, is very, very good, and our IMD homeopathic, and some lymph drainage, and of course the ketone is also good for the lymph drainage. Here you see a guy with a bad liver marker, so we use lymphatic drainage and hepatic drainage, along with a little bit of glutathione and maybe 1 clear way per day to start slowly bringing up the activity of that liver system and that lymph system. So that's all that we have for today. Please, as I mentioned before, go and see if I can get that on and get the website back up. Go to purative.com. We will post this webinar up there. You can order any of these products. Remember, while you're learning how to do these specific detoxification protocols, and we can set you up with the different protocols which will teach you how to titrate up through the levels. While you're learning to do that, start using the glutathione and the vitamin C with all these other pathologies that respond to that. If you want just a general antioxidant formula, use those, or use the Clearway and start seeing how those respond. Buy a couple cases of each of those and you will not regret it.